Many anglers will quit fishing during the month of December because they think that it's just not worth it to be out on the water. This is further from the truth. You have the potential to catch some giant bass during December and potentially your next personal best. In this video, I will tell you 5 lures and a bonus lure that are my confidence lures to use during December. As long as you can brave the elements, you can make some great memories out on the water during December, and potentially you might have the lake all to yourself. Let me know in the comments section down below if you agree or disagree with my top 5 baits to use during December. Also, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. At the time of recording this, we're at 3.14k subs, and I really can't say enough how much I appreciate all the support that you guys are giving to the channel. It really means so much to me. The first lure I want to talk about today is the jig. The jig is my favorite lure to use when the bass are relating to the bottom, and is extremely effective to target bass in December that are very lethargic. A jig can produce some quality bites all year, but especially in December when the bite gets tough. And you can catch some nice bass during December fishing a jig. During the month, bass will be relating to deeper water, and the jig is one of the best ways that you can target these bass. The football jig is my favorite jig to use during December, especially whenever I'm working it slowly across the bottom. During this time of year when I'm fishing deep, I like to fish the jig as slow as possible to better imitate the forage that the bass will be feeding on during the winter. During the winter, the forage will be very sluggish whenever moving throughout the water. This is why it's very important to fish slow this time of year, so you can better imitate the forage and so you can get more bites. The jig works well in many different situations, but especially around rocks, wood cover, and docks. However, this time of year, I really like to target rocks just because of how well they absorb heat during the winter time. But it really depends on where the bass are relating to for that day. Fishing the jig slowly is one of the best ways to get a reaction strike out of the bass, especially whenever the water temperatures start to drop. This time of year, I like to throw 2 styles of jigs. The first type of jig I like to throw is a football jig. The football jig is my go-to jig most of the time just because I have a lot of confidence in it, and it catches some huge bass, especially if you're fishing it in the right situations. When I'm fishing the jig this time of year, I try to fish it as slow as possible so it looks very natural whenever it's moving throughout the water. Fishing the jig slowly this time of year is how I get the most bites, especially if they're not wanting to bite that day. The second style jig I like to throw is a finesse jig. The finesse jig does well when the bass are not wanting to commit to a full-size jig presentation and catches some giant bass during December. Don't think that a smaller presentation jig will only catch small bass. It will catch some good quality fish. The finesse jig excels during the winter and is one of the best ways to get pressure bass to bite. The jig can be fished in many different scenarios and can catch some giant bass during December. The jig is one of the best baits in my opinion that you can throw during December, and you can potentially catch your next PB whenever the water temperatures drop. The second lure I want to talk about today is the swim bait. This is a very broad category due to how many different types of swim baits you can use during December. I'm mainly referring to paddle tail swim baits, glide baits, and soft swim baits. However, there's many different types of swim baits on the market, and it's best to experiment to see what works best for you and the body of water that you are fishing. Swim baits can be very effective to draw out some huge bass and get them to commit to your bait. Most of the time whenever I'm fishing a swim bait this time of year, I mainly will throw a paddle tail to closely resemble the forage in the body of water I'm fishing. I mainly will throw a Kitech swing impact fat due to its lifelike action whenever it's moving throughout the water. However, throwing a soft style swim bait or a glide bait can be very effective, but it really just depends on the mood for the bass for that particular day. Many anglers do not have confidence throwing swim baits, especially the larger profile ones. One of the best ways to get some confidence with a swim bait is by throwing a larger size paddle tail and then transitioning to a soft style swim bait or a glide bait. By using a swim bait during December, you can have the potential to catch your next PB, and it can be very addictive fishing with swim baits. You will not get many bites fishing a swim bait this time of year, but the fish that you do get to bite will be some good quality fish. Make sure whenever you're out fishing during December that you have some type of swim bait tied on. The third lure I want to talk about today is the Ned Rig. Whenever the bass are not wanting to commit to any other lure, especially in the cooler months like December, I will always reach for the Ned Rig. The Ned Rig is one of the best finesse techniques that you can use and can be fished in many different types of situations. The Ned Rig can resemble a lot of different types of of forages depending on which type of soft plastic you pick. The smaller profile of the Ned Rig does well imitating the smaller bait fish that are present in many bodies of water this time of year and can be an effective way to catch them. Whenever I'm fishing the Ned Rig in December, I am normally imitating shad, blueback herring, or bluegill, depending on what the bass are feeding on in the body of water I'm fishing. Many people think that the Ned Rig catches small fish only, but it catches some huge fish during the winter time. My personal best smallmouth was caught on the Ned Rig, and I have caught countless other big fish using the Ned Rig when the water temperature drops. The Ned Rig is the perfect lure to use when the bass do not want to bite because of how well you can imitate many different types of forages and its action moving throughout the water column. Personally, I like to use the Z-Man Finesse TRD 90% of the time whenever I'm fishing the Ned Rig just because of its buoyancy whenever it's in the water. The buoyancy makes the Ned Rig look very realistic whenever you're working it across the bottom, and it can trick even the most hesitant of bass to bite it. There's many different types of retrieves that you can do, but generally during the cooler water months I like to fish it as slowly as possible so I can get the most bites, and this seems to work very well. Make sure whenever you're fishing during December that you have the Ned Rig tied on just in case if the bite gets tough. It was hard to select just 5 lures to talk about today, so I decided to add a bonus lure to the list. The bonus lure I'm going to talk about today is the drop shot. Whenever the bite gets tough on these cold December days, I will always reach for the drop shot. There's something about fishing a drop shot that the bass just cannot resist, especially when the bite gets tough. The drop shot is one of the most effective lures that you can use whenever they're not wanting to commit to a moving bait. The 3 most important things to consider whenever fishing a drop shot is what plastic you use, what hook you use, and what weight you use. Whenever deciding what soft plastic to use, it is important to consider what bait fish are present in the body of water that you're fishing. By matching the hatch, you will get many more bites during December whenever you're fishing a drop shot. However, this time of year I like to imitate shad, blueback herring, or bluegill depending on where I'm fishing at. Whenever it comes down to selecting what type of hook you should use, it is important to consider what type of cover that you will be fishing around. If you're going to be fishing around a lot of wood, for example, you might want to Texas rig your drop shot so you do not get hung up as much. Most of the time, I personally like to nose hook my drop shot just because it gives it a lot more action whenever I'm popping my rod tip up and down, and it drives the bass crazy. Also, it's important to consider what type of weight you are using whenever you're fishing the drop shot. You want to use as light of a weight as possible so you can give your drop shot more action whenever it's suspended in the water column. This will help you land more bass during December and will make you much more efficient with the drop shot. The drop shot shines in many different conditions and can catch some huge bass during December when the bite gets tough. The 4th lure I want to talk about today is the jerkbait. The jerkbait is an important lure to have tied on this time of year due to how low the water temperatures are and how sluggish the bass are acting this time of year. The jerkbait shines in cold water temperatures and is one of the best ways to get lethargic bass to bite during the wintertime. The jerkbait is one of the best lures that you can have tied on during December and throughout the whole entire winter. Whenever it comes down to selecting what color jerkbait that you should throw, it is important to remember what bait fish are present in the body of water that you are fishing in. I mainly throw colors that resemble shad, blueback herring, or other bait fish that the bass will be feeding on during December. However, it really depends on what the bass are feeding on in the body of water that you are fishing. For example, some lakes might have a large population of perch that the bass will feed on, while other lakes will have a large population of blueback herring. I like fishing a jerkbait or a soft-styled jerkbait depending on what type of cover I'm fishing around and what mood the bass are in for that day. Whenever choosing a jerkbait, I exclusively use a Megabass Vision 110 because of its lifelike action whenever I'm working it throughout the water column. Compared to other jerkbaits, in my opinion, the Megabass Vision 110 does well imitating bait fish and how they act during the cooler water temperatures. The Megabass Vision 110 has caught me many nice fish over the years and is a staple in any tackle box, especially during December. Whenever I'm fishing a jerkbait, I normally like to fish it in open water situations or near spots where bass will be relating to during the wintertime. Whenever it comes down to selecting a soft style jerkbait, most of the time I will go with a fluke made by Strike King due to how well the fluke looks when moved throughout the water column, especially whenever the water temperatures are very low. I like to fish the soft style jerkbait around cover that I would not fish the Megabass Vision 110 around due to me Texas rigging the fluke, so it does not get hung up as much compared to if I was fishing the Megabass Vision 110 in the same situations. This is because fishing the Megabass Vision 110 around cover will get hung up a lot more often just because of the treble hooks on the bait. Whenever it comes down to selecting what soft style jerkbait or jerkbait that you should choose, it really does come down to personal preference and what the bass are wanting for that day. I have caught some nice sized bass fishing the soft style jerkbait during the wintertime, and it is often a lure that is overlooked by many anglers. Make sure whenever you're targeting bass during December that you have the jerkbait tied on and ready to go. The fifth lure I want to talk about today is the Alabama rig. The Alabama rig is one of the most effective lures that you can throw, and is especially effective during the wintertime and during December. Many anglers view the Alabama rig as a controversial lure, and many tournaments have banned the use of it along with some states. The Alabama rig can be a very effective way at mimicking a school of bait fish and is a good technique to know, especially if you want to catch your next personal best bass. Make sure before you go fishing with the Alabama rig that you know the regulations in the body of water that you are fishing in and the state regulations for the state that you are fishing in. Many states will allow the Alabama rig but limit how many hooks that can be present on it, so make sure you know how many hooks that you can use whenever you're fishing the Alabama rig, depending on which state or body of water that you're fishing. The Alabama rig can trick even the most hesitant of bass to bite. Whenever you are fishing the Alabama rig, you will catch a lot of fish, but you will also catch some good quality fish while using it. The Alabama rig can attract some huge bass and has great drawing power whenever retrieved throughout the water column. Big bass this time of year will look for a big and easy meal, and the Alabama rig is just the ticket to use during December. Make sure whenever you're fishing during December that you have the Alabama rig tied on so you can potentially catch your next personal best bass. These are my top 5 baits to use during December, and these lures will help you catch more bass whenever you're fishing during the colder weather. It was hard to select just 5 lures and a bonus lure to talk about this month, but these lures will work in many different situations throughout the whole entire country. If you have any questions or comments, let me know in the comment section down below. Also, let me know if you agree or disagree with my top 5 baits during December, and if I missed your favorite lure to throw during this month. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button to help the video in the YouTube algorithm so more people can get recommended this video and to help the channel grow. If you are not subscribed, I would love to have you join the channel, especially if you made it this far in the video. If you want to see a technique that catches bass during the wintertime, make sure you check out this video right here.